First of all, good evening and thank you very much for joining. I greatly appreciate it. Bruchim Aboim, as they say in Lashon Kodesh. In the last time we got together, we spoke about the Tanya, which basically we're about to get to a very great part, a very important part of the Alter Rebbe's life as the Alter Rebbe, which is the imprisonment of the Alter Rebbe. The Tanya was like an introduction, it led up to it. And we were discussing all about the Tanya just now, in the last few lectures, about, number one, why the Alter Rebbe allowed the Tanya to be printed, because the opposition was falsifying it, and so on and so forth. We spoke about the agreements by Reb Zusha of Anipoli and Reb Yehuda Leib HaKohen, who agreed with the printing of the Tanya, and so on and so forth. So after that, we started talking about certain points that the Frierdiker Rebbe, when he told us the whole story about the Tanya, he wrote down a bunch of points, a group of points, different points and aspects about the Tanya. I think it was like 20 different points. We're only doing a few because it's a lot of them are very complicated and long. I mean complicated, I mean there's a lot of depth to it. So we're just going to do a few of them. One of them is, first of all, point number two that the Frierdiker Rebbe says is that, so we were speaking about the Tanya and we're going to continue now, but not for long, because the next part is the imprisonment of the Alter Rebbe, which is a very big part in itself about the Alter Rebbe. Okay, so the Frierdiker Rebbe writes, point number two about the Tanya is that the Alter Rebbe wrote the Tanya 20 years it took him to write the Sefer Likutei Amorim. 20 years he was adding letters, adding words, and subtracting, taking off words, taking off letters, until he made something that was extremely, extremely clear and concise. And as we know, he sent it to Reb Yehuda Leib HaKohen and Reb Zusha of Anipoli to find out if they will agree for the printing of the Tanya. Another point out the Frierdiker Rebbe makes, point number three. Again, I'm not saying all the points, but I'm just going to give you the numbers. Point number three says the Rebbe as follows, the Frierdiker Rebbe. There was a chassid, a famous chassid called, in Chabad they called him the Rashdam, Reb Shmuel Doiv Barisover, Reb Shmuel Ber Barisover. He was a chassid of Tzemach Tzedek, perhaps, I don't remember exactly which Rebbe he was a chassid of, and then later on he was there in the days of the Rebbe Maharash. And he was also in the days of the Rebbe Rashab. The Reb Shmuel Ber Barisover told this following statement to the Rebbe Rashab. Who's the Rebbe Rashab? He's the Frierdiker Rebbe's father. So he told him as follows: this is what I heard from the Chassid Reb Isaac Homler, Reb Isaac of Hummel. Reb Isaac of Hummel, we all know, was a Chassid of the Alter Rebbe, Mittler Rebbe, and Tzemach Tzedek. Says the Rashdam what he heard from Reb Isaac Homler. When it was found out by the Chassidim, it became known that the Alter Rebbe came out of prison and is traveling home. We all, Chassidim from all over the cities, traveled to Lyozne. We wanted to be there when the Alter Rebbe arrives from prison. When we arrived in Lyozne, says Reb Isaac Homler, we found already hundreds of Chassidim that came from near and from far. And when the Alter Rebbe finally arrived in Lyozne, coming back from prison in Petersburg, all the Chassidim went out to greet the Alter Rebbe. After a few days went by, this is Tov Kuf Nun Tes, 1798-99. A few days went by and all the older Chassidim sat down for a huge Farbrengen and a celebration. And by this Farbrengen, the Alter Rebbe's son, the Mittler Rebbe, showed up. And he told over to the Chassidim this following information about the Alter Rebbe. He said when the Tanya, about the Tanya and the Alter Rebbe, when the Tanya came out in print, said the Mittler Rebbe, the Samach Mem, which means the evil Yetzer Hara, the evil angel, the evil forces, the negative forces, started to prosecute in heaven against the Alter Rebbe. Why the Alter Rebbe was able to do such a thing, to spread so much godliness in this dark world? Because he also wants a certain amount of leverage, so he should be able to get people to do the opposite. That's his job. And the Alter Rebbe, by bringing out the Tanya, took away some of that leverage, or all of the leverage. And then said the Mittler Rebbe, my father, the Alter Rebbe, accepted upon himself everything, even, God forbid, Yisurei Miso, which means the suffering of the opposite of life, all the way to the end, he accepted upon himself. But the Alter Rebbe asked and prayed to the Eibishter. He asked Bakashas Rachmin. He awakened mercy by Hashem that at least his book should be accepted by all the Yidden, and that there should be a tremendous increase in knowledge of understanding Hashem, of knowing Hashem. For 2 years, says the Mittler Rebbe, remember the Tanya was printed in Tov Kuf Nun Zayin. The Alter Rebbe was imprisoned in Tov Kuf Nun Tes, meaning 1796-7, end of 6, was when the Alter Rebbe printed the Tanya. Remember, it was Chav Kislev instead of before Yitas Kislev. And 2 years later, the Alter Rebbe was arrested after Sukkot, which is 1790, end of 98. So he says like this, the Samach Mem, the evil force, continued to speak prosecution against the Alter Rebbe for 2 years. He didn't stop. Why? Why the Alter Rebbe was allowed to set up a way of serving Hashem in the way of the Baal Shem Tov, that every single Jew could reach it. We all know the Baal Shem Tov is the founder of the Hasidic movement and the founder of how to serve the Eibishter, but not every Yid was able to understand everything. Who gave the Alter Rebbe the right to explain it so all the levels of Jewish people should be able to understand it? Says the Mittler Rebbe, his son, by this Farbrengen, that on the first day of Rosh Hashanah, during Tkiyas, this is the year that the Alter Rebbe was arrested, right? We're talking now about a Farbrengen that happened after the Alter Rebbe came back from prison. So the Mittler Rebbe said that this Rosh Hashanah, that same year by Tkiyas, it was an Eis sorrow, a time of distress. Everything was going, as they say, kaput, was going bad. And who was in danger? Not only the Alter Rebbe, but the whole Hasidic community were in danger. And after the Alter Rebbe awakened mercy in heaven, they came to a decision in the heavenly court, in the Bezdin Shalmailo, that the Alter Rebbe will suffer Yisurei Misa. Because we know that those 53 days he was in prison, especially the first part of the prison, he suffered horribly. And he's going to get all those sufferings, they said in Bezdin Shalmailo. And we saw, says the Mittler Rebbe, that he suffered for 53 days, horribly. For every perik of Tanya, he suffered 1 day, because the Tanya has 53 parakim. However, says the Mittler Rebbe, because of the Alter Rebbe's Mesiras Nefesh, selflessness, total giving up his life for this, they paskened one more thing in the heavenly court. That from now on, meaning from the Yitas Kislev and on, anything in the world that is something to do connected to Torah, fear of Hashem, Yireh Shamayim, and Midos Tovos, behaving with Avas Yisrael to another Yid. So whenever there's going to be a problem in the world about that, the Alter Rebbe's Hasidim, their hand will be, they will have the upper hand. In other words, Hasidus will win out anything that's connected to Torah, Yireh Shamayim, and Midas Tovos. So, and that's what happened, because we see over the years, that's my own explanation, that many times the Hasidim were a minority, and a lot of people were doing things against them, whether it was at first the opposition of the Misnagdim, or the Maskilim later on, or the Efsektia in Russia, whoever it was, the Yad Hasidim, means the hand of the Hasidim, was always on top, always overpowered everything. The next thing the Frierdiker Rebbe says, point number 4, very interesting story. There was a Chassid called Rebbe Wolf Kazevnikov, or as they say, his real name was Doiv Ze'ev Kazevnikov. In Yiddish, it's Rebbe Wolf. He was a Chassid of the Tzemach Tzedek. And then he also was, I believe, by the Rebbe Maharash. So he told over, and I think the Frierdiker Rebbe as a young person, so the Rebbe Rashab for sure, I think the Frierdiker Rebbe even saw him and heard some stories from him as a young person, but I'm not sure at this point. I think I once said something about that. I don't remember. So he, Rebbe Wolf Kazevnikov, who was a chassid starting from the Tzemach Tzedek's days, said over what he heard from a Rav Tzadik. You see, the Frierdiker Rebbe called Reb Hillel Paritcher, who was only a chassid, he called him the Tzaddik Reb Hillel Paritcher, because he was on such a high level. So he told this over. Reb Hillel Paritcher was a chassid of not Mamish the Alter Rebbe, even though he was in his days, but we know the story, he never was able to meet, from heaven they never let him meet the Alter Rebbe. He only heard the Alter Rebbe's voice while hiding under a bed. in the room where the Alter Rebbe was, and then he fainted. So he never actually saw the Alter Rebbe's face, but he was already existing in those days. He was a chassid of the Alter Rebbe, but he became a full-blown chassid of the Mittler Rebbe and the Tzemach Tzedek. And Hillel Paritcher, how did he come to Chassidus? He had a Rebbe, in other words, a chassid who was his teacher, who was called Reb Zalman Zezmer. Zezmer, I think, is the name of a city, but I'm not sure. And Reb Zalman Zezmer was a chassid of the Alter Rebbe. He was a very great chassid. He brought a lot of misnagdish or other scholars to Chassidus. Reb Zalman Zezmer, he was a very powerful, he had a powerful way of explaining Chassidus and so on. So he told this story to Reb Hillel Paritcher, who told it over to Reb Berev Wolf Kazebnikov. And the Frierdiker Rebbe heard it from him, I believe, and we have that story. He says like this, Reb Zalman Zezmer said, when I was a bacher, a young student, we'll soon see, he was 15, 16 years old, a bacher from yeshiva. I learned by the Goyim, the great scholar, the old man, Rebbe Elimelech Shol, a great genius in the city of Polotsk. 4 years before Rebbe Elimelech Shol, in those days there were a lot of these geniuses who ran yeshivas or had small groups of bachrim. This Rebbe Elimelech Shol, 4 years before he passed away, says Reb Zalman Zezmer to Reb Hillel, I was 16 years old, says Reb Zalman Zezmer. In those days, 16 was like today, 50, hopefully. I'm not joking, they were so different. I was 16 years old, so my teacher, Rebbe Elimelech Shol, revealed to me that he didn't know at first that he's a chassid, because a lot of people used to hide it. He says he revealed to me that he was many times by the Baal Shem Tov and his student, the Mezritcher Maggid, and he was a friend of the great tzaddikim who were talmidim of the Mezritcher, of the Rabbi Yisrael Baal Shem Tov, tzaddikim, the story. One was called Rabbi Yisrael, the other one was called Rabbi Zriel from Polotsk. And from then, when he revealed to me this fact that he is a student of the Baal Shem Tov and the Mezritcher Maggid, Rebbe Elimelech Shol, he started teaching me the way how to serve Hashem according to the teachings of the Baal Shem Tov. This is Rebbe Elimelech Shol. This is what Rebbe Zalman Zezmer tells him. In the year Tov Kuf Mem Gimel, this is 10 years before the Mezritcher Maggid passed away. So the Alter Rebbe was still Tov Kuf Mem Gimel. No, it's 10 years after the Mezritcher Maggid passed away. I'm sorry. After the Mezritcher Maggid passed away, the Alter Rebbe was already leading Chassidim. So in Tov Kuf Mem Gimel, my Rebbe, Rebbe Elimelech Shol, my teacher, passed away. Before he passed away, he told me these words: go to Liozne, to the Alter Rebbe, and I listened, and then he passed away. I listened to him. I went to the Alter Rebbe in Liozne, and I was accepted as a member, as a student of the third level. The Alter Rebbe had students, a yeshiva in Liozne, 3 levels. I don't remember if the third was the highest or the lowest. I can't remember right now. But Reb Zalman Zezmer was accepted as a 3rd level student. Huh? Chadorim, yeah. I don't.
He was a red belt. He got past yellow.
3rd degree.
He went from yellow to
From time to time, says Reb Zalman Zezmer.
The first one was the highest.
The highest is number 1.
Number one.
Oh, okay, sorry. So 3rd was the lowest level, because he was it was also very, very high. And he was himself, genius. So he says, from time to time, I used to see in a dream my teacher, Rebbe Elimelech Shol. And he used to tell me Divrei Torah, and he used to teach me ways on how to serve Hashem. When the Tanya...
Is he connected to Yitzchak Shul?
No, Rebbe Elimelech Shol.
No.
It's a Jew that you don't hear too much about. But in those days, there were a lot of these type of people. Loads and loads, who trained people, who taught people, who had yeshivas, small yeshivas, big yeshivas.
Polotsk, by the way.
This is Polotsk, yes, or Polotsk. From time, when the Tanya came out in print, says Reb Zalman Zezmer to Reb Hillel Paritcher, one night I saw in a dream my teacher, Rebbe Elimelech Shol, and he said to me these words: you should know that the Sefer HaTanya of your Rebbe, the Alter Rebbe, corresponds to the parshas of the Chamisha Chumshei Torah. The 5 books of the Torah. And just like Bereshis, the parsha, the first parsha, is a very general parsha, like an introduction to the Torah, tells us about the creation of the world and so on. The same way, says Rebbe Elimelech Shol, the Hakdamah, the introduction that the Alter Rebbe gives for the Tanya, is also in a way like a general introduction to the whole Tanya. He's basically telling him that the Tanya, in the Hasidic level of Torah, is like the Chamisha Chumshei Torah. And every single perek, says Rebbe Melech Shul in his dream to him, is corresponding to another parsha in the same order. I woke up, says Rebbe Zalman Zezmer, to Rebbe Hillel, and from then I started learning every single week, every day. I would learn the whole week one perek of Tanya till I got through the 53 prakim, through the whole year. Every single day he would learn that same perek over for 1 week, just like somebody reads a parsha in the Chumash. Maybe he divided the perek, I don't know, but it says here perek echad b'chol yom, and it's perek echad b'kol yom ois shavua, meaning the whole week he learned that only perek. So in Parsha Breshis he would learn perek aleph. When the Alter Rebbe came out from that terrible danger of imprisonment in Petersburg, in the year Tov Kuf Nun Tes 1798 at the end, an announcement came out amongst the Chassidim, especially the older Chassidim, to do that. They didn't know about the Zalman Zezmer. He did it privately. But when Alter Rebbe came out, the older Chassidim announced that everybody should learn one perek of Tanya an entire week, corresponding to the Parshas HaShavua. Huh?
The Rebbe said that, like in the parshas, all the parshas start with the letter Vov, besides the 11. Same thing also in the
Tanya, wow.
All of them start with Vov.
You hear that? In the Parsha of the Torah, Breshi starts with a base, and Noach also starts with an Aleph, Eila till this Noach. But most of, except for, in other words, 11 of them start without a Vov in the beginning, like Vayoim, Vayedaber, but the rest are all with a Vov. And in the Tanya, he says the same thing, where 11 Prakim chapters start with out of Vav, and the rest are with a Vav.
There's 53
Prakim, yes. Parshas, yes. Yes. You look good, you'll see. The next story, says the Frierdiker Rebbe, number 5, story number 5. The great Chassid, Reb Yitzchak Isaac. There was an Isaac Homler, we speak a lot about him, a famous Chassid, the Alter Rebbe, Mittel Rebbe, and the Tzemach Tzedek. And then there was a Chassid called Reb Yitzchak Isaac of Vitebsk. Another person, same name almost. And he was also a Chassid in the olden days, but he saw the Rebbe Maharash, and he told this to the Rebbe Maharash, Reb Yitzchak Isaac of Vitebsk. He said that in the year Tov Kuf Samach, which is the year 1800, it's actually a month or two, it's like December 1799, end of December of 1799. It was Yutas Kislev that year, a year after the Alter Rebbe came out of prison. And that year, it's the first year after the Alter Rebbe came out. So on Yutas Kislev, Tov Kuf Samach, they all gathered, the Hasidim gathered, and made a big farbrengen in the shul of the Alter Rebbe to celebrate the first Yutas Kislev. The simcha, the happiness was major, huge. Suddenly, the grandson of the Alter Rebbe, the Tzemach Tzedek, came into the shul. Now, if you guys know, if you remember that the Shiurim, which I also have to always refresh my memory, the Tzemach Tzedek was born in Tov Kuf Mem Tes. 10 years later, the Alter Rebbe came out of prison. So he was only 10 years old when he came out of prison. This is the next year. So he's 11 years old, the Tzemach Tzedek, before his Bar Mitzvah. He comes into shul, where the Hasidim are all celebrating such happiness that the Alter Rebbe came out last year. And he gave a bang on the Omid in the shul, became quiet, and he screamed out, Uma Tohoreiso, just like we say in Chastera. But this is Yutas Kislev, middle of the winter. So,
That's
Tzemach Tzedek, he's 11 years old. And he said, it's Simchas Torah today. Because it's a happiness, the Torah was saved, because Alter Rebbe came out of prison, he was saved. And then the Tzemach Tzedek started giving out psukim of the actual Ator Reisa. He's Mechabed, the Chosid, or whatever it is, to say Ator Reisa, all the way, Kimitzi, Ein Teitzei Seira, Udvar Hashem, Yerushalayim, the whole Ator Reisa. And when he finished, he took a Tanya, they had the printed Tanya, he took a Tanya, and he started announcing, is Mechabed so-and-so, it doesn't say, with a Sefer Torah, with the first Hakofa, a Sefer Torah with the first Hakofa, and he gave him the Tanya. And they danced around the bima like Hakofas till the wee hours of the night, says Reb Isaac Vitebsker, Reb Yitzchak Isaac Vitebsker. And Reb Yitzchak Isaac Vitebsker then heard from the Alter Rebbe's brother, whose name was Reb Yehuda Leib. They called him the Maharil, which is a Rosh Tevis. Rabbi Yehuda Leib, the Alter Rebbe's brother, told Rabbi Isaac Vitebsker that when they came and told the Alter Rebbe what happened that night with the Tzemach Tzedek making hakafas, the Alter Rebbe had tremendous pleasure from this. And he called his grandson, 11-year-old, and he put his two holy hands on his head and he benched him that you should be zeiche to reveal the oral part of the Torah that's found in the written part of the Torah of Torah Chasidus. Because the Tzemach Tzedek wrote Chasidus and Maimorim, which we get a better understanding of the Tanya. So that's what Alter Rebbe blessed him for doing that stuff. That's the stuff with the Simchas Torah. The number 6, I'm not going to say all of them, I told you just a few more. The number 6, the Frierdiker Rebbe says that there was a chassid called Reb David Tzvi Chaim. They called him Rosh Tevis, Radatz. He said it over in his father's name, who was called Reb Peretz Chaim. This Reb Peretz Chaim was a chassid at Tzemach Tzedek, very big Lamdan and a Rov, very, very famous in Chabad. And this father of his, Reb Peretz Chaim, said that with the Tanya, he heard it from the Mittel Rebbe. I made a mistake. Reb Peretz Chaim heard it from the Mittel Rebbe, who said, my father, with the Tanya, opened up a new chamber in heaven, in the yeshiva of heaven, Mesifta de Rakia. For who? For the regular chassidim that were scholars for sure. But even simple chassidim who don't understand the words of the Tanya, just by saying the words of the Tanya, their highest level of their neshama was revealed because of what the Alter Rebbe did. Just like the scholarly ones. So a person has to know, it's like saying Tehillim almost. If a person doesn't understand it, at least he says the words of the Tanya, he's also on a very, very high, his neshama gets revealed, the Eisen Shabbat Neshama, which is the highest level of the neshama. Okay, we'll skip the next few of them. One second. Number 8. Very interesting story. This was told to the Frierdiker Rebbe by his own father, the Rebbe Rashab. The Rebbe Rashab told us them, Reb Shalom Rebbe. And he heard it from his father-in-law. Who was the Rebbe Rashab's father-in-law? He married his first cousin, the Rebbe Rashab. No. Yeah, he married his first cousin. His father-in-law was called Reb Yosef Yitzchak, who was a son of the Tzemach Tzedek. So his father, the Rebbe Rashab's father, was the Rebbe Marash, the youngest son of the Tzemach Tzedek. His father-in-law was an older son of the Tzemach Tzedek. So his father-in-law, Rebbe Yosef Yitzchak, a son of the Tzemach Tzedek, told the Rebbe Rashab this following story. And he heard it from his father, the Tzemach Tzedek, Rebbe Yosef Yitzchak. Said the Tzemach Tzedek to him, to his own son, when I was a bacher, when I was young, I decided I want to make nukudas, vowels, in the whole Tanya. Tanya with a dot and the tov, and a patach, and a shva on the nun, and the comments on the yud, right? He wanted to make vowels in the whole Tanya. And to divide it into verses, into psukim, just like you have in the Torah. Pasuk Aleph, Pasuk Beis. As soon as I made that decision, says the Tzemach Tzedek, I was a bach, I was young then, I had a dream that same night. I have a dream, I'm sitting there and learning the laws in Shulchan Aruch about writing a Sefer Torah. Hilchos Ksivas Sefer Torah. And suddenly they come to me with a question. And the question is a halachic question. If they took a Sefer Torah and wrote it according to the halacha, the whole Sefer Torah is a kosher Sefer Torah. And then they took the same Sefer Torah and they made vowels, and a Sefer Torah we all know, straight, there's no psukim there, only in the Chumash, in the printed Chumash. And they made vowels and psukim in the Sefer Torah. What's the halacha? After a long pilpul, which means back and forth and going through all the details, says that Tzemach Tzedek, in my dream, I made the Sefer, I said it's kosher. And when I woke up from the dream, I understood the hint. It can't be kosher. It's not. So he said, I understood the hint in the dream. But what I'm trying to do to the Tanya is like trying to say a Sefer Torah with vowels is kosher.
Not allowed.
Not allowed. That same day, I had to, after the dream, I had an appointment with my grandfather, my Zayda, the Alter Rebbe. I had to be by his room for something. Doesn't say what. When I finished, I was about to walk out of his room. I just stepped over the doorpost. My grandfather, my Zayda, turned to me and said to me these words. A Sefer Torah that they put nekudes into it and divided it into psukim is possible. The reason, because the entire Torah, every single word, are all names of the of Hashem, of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And those names of Hashem make different combinations, secret combinations that are, special combinations. The whole world exists in that. Now, if you make a pasuk, you're dividing and you're taking away certain combinations that can't exist anymore, so to speak. That's my own explanation. It doesn't say that here. It says he told him, Sefer Torah, that you made Nekudas and Psukim is possible because the Torah is all names of the Eibishter, Kadosh Baruch Hu, that make different combinations. So I was thinking to myself, we know in the last so many years, people with computers made these kind of calculations in the Torah. They said, give me every third letter, give me every second letter, and they got words out of it. I don't know if they know what they're talking about. It could be all nothingness. But the fact is that there's a lot of secrets in the Torah. We know from our great Gedolei Yisrael that found Gematrias and Rimozim and so on and so forth. So perhaps I'm saying if they divide, that's my own pirish maybe, humble own pirish, that when you divide it, the combinations are there because it's all one long Sefer Torah. When you divide it, you're taking away something. You're cutting up certain combinations. I don't know. That's the story from the Tzemach Tzedek. I'm going to mention again, we spoke about it, that the Alter Rebbe started the Sefer Tanya because the word Tanya was actually, in Kabbalah Sforim, we say that there's a word, a klipa, an evil force, a negative force, that has that name. The Alter Rebbe tried to break that force by starting such a holy Sefer with that name. It's a Hebrew name, but that guy has that name and was using it for negative things, but the Alter Rebbe brought Tanya, that's what it was. Others say that also, in another place, the Frierdiker Rebbe writes that Tanya was also a force that was specifically by Limdei Torah, by people who study Torah, that it caused them some negative thing, either gaiva or something, I don't know what. And Alter Rebbe took that away with the Tanya. Let me go a little further.
So yesterday,
518, yes.
my matzah box says approved by Tanya. I don't know what it means.
The quality control engineer.
Straight matzah, straight. It said approved by Tanya.
Okay.
Huh?
Interesting. Okay, number, I don't know which number this is, but the Frierdiker Rebbe tells us like this. It is,
Somebody made a heart in the subway below Tanya. And someone said she got wrote me too. Years ago.
the Frierdiker Rebbe writes, we spoke a little bit about it, but we'll say it over. And then the Alter Rebbe was medayik. That means he was very particular in detail of the Tanya, when he wrote the Tanya. Every single word and every single letter, he was careful, should he put it in or should he not put it in? It's known in our family, says the Frierdiker Rebbe, Kabbalas Mishpachas Beis Rebbe. That means something that was passed down in the Rebbe's family. Not everyone knew about it. The Frierdiker Rebbe revealed all this to us. It is known that one time the Alter Rebbe's brother, Rabbi Yehuda Leib, who was also called Rabbi Yehuda Leib of Yanovich. Yanovich is a city where he became a Rav or something, or he lived there. He once came into the Alter Rebbe's room and found his brother sitting by the writing desk, by the writing table, very deep in thought, very like in a trance. A long time went by, and the Alter Rebbe suddenly woke up from his trance, and he saw his brother standing next to him. And the Alter Rebbe told him, this is already the third week that I'm sitting here and contemplating in writing this word. And he showed him on the paper, there was a certain word. Should I start it with a vav hamachaber, vav hachibur, or not? Vav hachibur in Hebrew means a vav in the beginning of the word that connects it to previous, to before. You could say a vav without a chibur, but generally it says this and this, so it's connected to something before. In the Tanya, there's many places where he says something, like the Avodah, the main part of the Avodah, but in some places the Avodah and its main root, so the Alter Rebbe adds a vav. For whichever vav it was, the Alter Rebbe told his brother, it's already 3 weeks that I'm working on whether to put in that Vav HaMechaber or not. And the Alter Rebbe concluded and said, a Vav in the Beinonim, meaning in the Sefer HaTanya of the Beinonim, is worth to set aside 6 weeks. Because in the 7th week, there's a godly light that will come down and shine on every single letter in the Tanya. And then he said, every time I wanted to make a Vav in the Tanya, in my mind, I went through the entire Tanya from beginning to end before I decided to make the Vav. That's what the Rebbe told his brother. This is something that was passed down for a long time. Nobody knew about this until the Frierdiker Rebbe revealed it to us. Okay. Do one more second. No, I'm not done. Okay, now that we spoke about the Tanya and we know the greatness of the Tanya and how many Yidden we know in the last 100 years, how many Yidden came close to Yiddishkeit, how many Yidden came back to Yiddishkeit just through the Tanya, we're going to start going over to the next part of the Alter Rebbe's life, which is a very, very large part, which all the Yidden in the world celebrate. It's Kislev. And we'll go to that. We'll see later that the Tanya was one of the main causes for the Misnagdim to lose it and go all out in a very bad way. We'll soon see that. So when did the Alter Rebbe finish the Tanya? Tov Kuf Nun Zayin, it was printed. Okay? And Tov Kuf Nun Ches, remember he said they should learn it in the beginning of the year, I think it was, in Elul, before Tov Kuf Nun Ches. Tov Kuf Nun Zayin was printed a half a year later, a little bit more. It was printed on Chof Kislev. The next year, Tov Kuf Nun Ches, Chalamoyed Sukkos, the famous Vilna Goyen Zechreinu Levracha passed away on Chalamoyed Sukkos. The entire Jewish world at that time was in shock, because after all, he was the greatest genius in the Jewish world. That they held of him as the greatest genius, and he was a great genius, and he was a leader of a large portion of the Jewish people, the whole Lithuanian.
He's very old.
It doesn't say it. The Alter Rebbe, as soon as the Vilna Goyen passed away, a lot of things happened. The Alter Rebbe first thing came out and publicized a public letter to all the Chassidim with a very scary warning that no one should dare speak a not nice word, or even something that's close to not nice word, about the Vilna Goyen Zechreinu Levracha. The Alter Rebbe called him HaTalmid Chacham HaGoyen HaChosid Zechreinu Levracha. Without any excuses, no heterim, no excuses. Can't find any excuses. And the Alter Rebbe said in the letter, I want you to continue to live with love with all of our Jewish brothers, even if they're not part of the Hasidic movement. However, this letter had an effect only on the Chassidim. I shouldn't say not on the Misnagdim, because a lot of Misnagdim did not do these terrible things, but there were a group of zealots amongst the Misnagdim who, after the Vilna Goyen passed away, decided this is it. We gotta fight the Chassidim now stronger than ever, because that was his desire of the Vilna Goyen. As a matter of fact, right after Sukkot, they came out with a public announcement, the opposition, that the Chassidim celebrated the passing of the Vilna Goyen, Chas v'Shalom. It was Sukkot, people were doing the Sukkot meals and Simchas Torah, Shmini Atzeres. They used it out in some of these people, a very negative way. They finally decided, Chalamoyed. Yeah. And the Chassidim, everybody was so respectful, but it didn't help. The Misnagdim decided, this new group of Misnagdim, who made themselves an organization to fight the Chassidim, decided, if we will not be successful like until now by just making excommunications and so on, we're going all the way. We're going to go to the Tsar, to the ministers, all the way to Petersburg, to accuse the Alter Rebbe and the Chassidim. Whether we're going to say the truth or lie does not matter. They said everything is kosher now to hurt the Chassidim. And it's a mitzvah. Why? Because the Vilna Goyen wanted it that way. So they decided to hurt the Chassidim as much as possible, whatever they can. I think that we'll stop in this part. Well, the next part is going to be about what they did, but before that, I want to say just a few short points of the Rebbe's Sichos in the year Tafshin Yudalet, Tafshin Yudbeis, 1952, 54, 51, how the Rebbe expressed himself about Chassidus. One of the Rebbe's things was that Chassidim and the Rabbein said that Chassidus is called the secrets of the Torah. But not just the secrets of the secrets. It's the deepest part. And the Rebbe explained like this: Torah is compared to liquid. Liquid comes flowing from above to below. Torah came from above to below. There's three types of liquid, says the Rebbe. There's water, wine, and oil. Olive oil, right? Or oil. And in the water is compared to the revealed part of the Torah, the Chumash, the Mishnayos, the Halachas, Shulchan Aruch. The wine is corresponds to the secrets of the Torah, like Medrash, Gematriyos, different hints in the Torah that we find in the Gemara and the Medrash. The Shemen is called Rozin de Horaisa, which is the deepest secrets of the secrets of the Torah. What do we find about oil, says the Rebbe? Two opposites. Oil, on one hand, one side of the coin is that it cannot mix with others. It always flows to the top. Oil in all the liquids flows to the top, generally speaking. Doesn't mix. And this is why Jewish people are compared to in a mushal to oil, because they don't mix with other nations. They're always hein am levodat yishkei. The second thing, says the Rebbe, which is the opposite, is that oil seeps in and permeates everything. Even certain hard objects, which regular liquid would not seep in, oil will seep into it. And this segula, says the Rebbe, this quality or remedy you find in the Chassidus, in the secrets of the Torah. Why? Because Chassidus, he says, on one hand, says the Rebbe, it doesn't mix with anything. What is the meaning? Says the Rebbe, take a regular part of the Torah, take a guy who's a Jew, who's acting like a lowlife. He's away from Yiddishkeit, he's eating not cooked, whatever it is. He's going to learn, the learning might get affected by his behavior. He might even use it for a bad thing. Chassidus is not like that. A person could be in whatever situation he is. If he learns Chassidus, it's going to have the desired effect on him. It'll make him, it won't mix with the bad things, the Chassidus. On the other hand, says the Rebbe, Chassidus seeps into everything. In other words, if a person learns Chassidus, it automatically permeates, seeps into him, and that light of the Chassidus eventually will cause him to beat the negative, to beat the bad, and he'll be good. That's an interesting thing what the Rebbe says in a Fabreing about Chassidus. Another thing the Rebbe said about Chassidus, there's a Gemara where one of the sages, I don't remember who it was, told her, let's just say Baruch, I'm finishing Mamish a second. I don't know, I'll finish next time.
Is it?
For now, yeah, because he's saying Baruch already.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
By the way, the better vote password
Who?
The better vote password.
So before the 50 Rebbe? No, after.
After the Rebbe was
Right.